Hi guys, and welcome to Forward Play Podcast, episode 3. Myself, Darren Phillipson, head coach at Forward Play Futsal. Tonight I'm joined with Dave Kerr, who's the head coach at Vibes FC, and tonight's podcast is focused on the girls' game into the women's game, and we're going to basically look at the challenges that Dave faces, other coaches facing the girls' game, and also what we can learn and how do we improve going forward into kind of 25 through to 2030, I would say, over a 5-year period of what can we actually do strategy-wise to improve. So just a quick overview again on Forward Play Futsal. Forward Play is a futsal organisation set up in Kilmarnock. We're registered with the SYFA, and our focus is on developing technically elite players at the grassroots level. That's our main focus. We think there's a massive opportunity in Scottish football for all players to improve their technical ability, and that's why we run our sessions on a kind of week-to-week basis. Over 2026, we're going to be starting to play other teams, enter tournaments, and we'll see how it goes. So the growth of Forward Play coincides with this podcast, and as I say, it's episode 3. However, the podcast itself is to focus on the challenge of Scottish football at the grassroots level, and most importantly, how do we actually improve that? So I'll hand you over to Dave just to give yourself a quick introduction, and then we'll look back at some feedback for last week's podcast. Dave?
Thanks, Dan. So as you'll see for the t-shirt and the title, I'm the head coach at Vibes FC, which is my own small group coaching for girls. Similar idea to football. Than it is about sort of in-game awareness, but the primary driver of it's fun for girls. But I also coach at Pollock United, the grassroots club in the south side of Glasgow, where my daughter plays, and I coach our under-12s, soon to be under-14s team. So been coaching for about 3-4 years now. Been lucky enough this year to be Volunteer of the Year in the girls' game in the West region of Scotland. So hopefully having a bit of an impact on some of the players as voted for by the parents. But yeah, very much my vibe is about fun, but the technical ability of the game. So that's a kind of background of myself.
Oh, perfect, mate. And it's good to see that another coach like yourself who's actually focused on the technical ability of it. It's as I say to the coaches that I work with, the players I work with, is we don't really focus on or kind of get worried about conceding goals by a direct ball over the top, because we do play aggressive and we do play in the final third, and we're trying to be positive. So we know we're going to concede them, but the kind of method and the madness is by the time they hit 11 aside, those long balls will be kind of few and far between with the kind of offside. But everything needs to be developed on the technical side of it. Also, I tied in with Dave kind of following last week's episode, and it was based on the facilities. I focused on the area I'm from, so Ayrshire, and Ronnie, who was with us last week, he was kind of Port Glasgow. And the feedback we got on social media, particularly Facebook, was that the challenges aren't unique to Port Glasgow and Kilmarnock or Ayrshire. These are challenges which span Scotland, basically. I've cherry picked one of the comments for the parents. It's a bit of a read. However, if you bear with me, I think it summarises the 50-minute podcast perfectly for me. So I'm just going to read this verbatim, Dave, and let me know if this is kind of rings true to how you see it up there before we get into the girls side. So this is one of the feedback we got last week on the YouTube. So another good podcast, Darren. East Ayrshire covers a very large area with a scarcity of football facilities to meet the demand, as you pointed out in the video. You've also considered the logistics for the kids at this potentially results in long distances having to be travelled by parents twice a week for training, limiting inclusion to those with transport. If your kid can't get to the team that's local to their community, then you have to look further afield, and if transport is an issue, then you'll just give up. How do we include that pool of potential talented young players when there is no local facilities built to even the most basic standards local to them? We'll lose them is the answer. They'll never be discovered. What do you do instead? They'll hang about, they'll be bored, they'll be isolated, feeling devalued, and often seen as a nuisance to their communities. Of course, this isn't a bottomless pit. If Of course, there isn't a bottomless pit of council money, and there is so many organisations now requiring a cut of council funding. But surely there has to be a better way of providing football facilities to encourage talent, health, support, and social interaction without spending a big portion of that budget. How good would the coaches feel turning up every time just to have the basics, somewhere to store their kit, and not have to fight for a time slot on an oversubscribed pitch? It then goes on, Dave, to talk about like the parents side of it. So as a parent, I've stood watching through the metal fence at Loudon Academy and up at the Astro pitch at Auchinleck, which is now closed. Many times it's miserable. There is nothing to do during those winter nights. Even when it's dry, watching through a metal mesh is horrible. There's no physical barriers discourage involvement from the kids, friends, spectators, but most of all the parents. And the journey, often the pitches have no nearby facilities, no toilets for the parents or spectators to use, even locations for the pitches at the Grange Academy and the William McIlvanney campus, which are probably two of the best in Kilmarnock. You can't get into the facilities to use the toilets during training. There's nothing attractive about the grassroots game in football in Scotland. And for me as a parent, it's difficult to support my kids whilst they play in the rain. Rarely there's any shelter, and when it's also raining, I just have to sit in the car and miss it. It's not just the participating kids that are affected by the lack of decent facilities and pitches. It's the parents as well in the overall journey. Now that's a bit of a mouthful. I do appreciate that, but I thought that just summed up perfectly what we basically discussed last week, mate. So it was, and as I say, I don't want this podcast to be a doom and gloom podcast of Scottish football. We want to try and challenge change as well. I highlighted last week as well that there's a thing we make Kilmarnock, and they've £20 million worth of resources. £3 million of that's been allocated to ensuring the resources are spent correctly. Off the back of last week's podcast, we've now got a councillor chasing up that organisation for clarification on what do you mean by resources correctly. If we're getting a £20 million block grant from the UK government, how can we take £3 million of that away and then make sure it's spent correctly? It doesn't make sense. So even though the podcast is in its infancy, we are starting to have a wee bit of an impact, and that's the whole point of it. That's the reason we're trying to do it. We're all passionate about Scottish football. I love Scottish football. I don't like English football. I think it's a bit too over-sanitised and a bit boring. And I just think there's so much passion in Scottish football, but we've got big concerns and big areas that we need to focus on. So I just wanted to do a wee bit of a recap there, Dave, before we just basically, again, hand it over to yourself again and ask for a bit of an overview of how you find the girls' game, both with Vibes FC and with the other team you've got as well, mate, in Pollock, is it? So just if you want to give us a wee overview, mate, and we'll take it from there.
I suppose we're quite fortunate that we've got a facility, but to come back to the point that parents made, there's look across Scotland. We used to have Scotland to be covered in all weather pitches called red pitches. They've only got it, but they're everywhere. They've now been shut down and closed and barricaded, and most of the ones near me are turned into Astro facilities, which have a higher standard. But there's a player, you need to be part of a club. There's not really much room.
Oh, Dave, your mic's went. Hi, Dave. Sorry, your mic went there when you said the red ash. It just went. Sorry if you yeah, perfect.
So we used to have red ash pitches. I still stay in much the same area I grew up in, and there was maybe 6 to 8 places I could go and find a game of football of a weeknight. Just where guys went to school, whatever. They places are gone or barricaded. Even the concrete areas have been shut off to what essentially was the Scottish equivalent of futsal, which was playing on a wee patch of concrete in a tight area, and where you would develop the tight area skills. So at some misguided point in the last 20, 30 years, we've shut down all the free red ash parks. We've got all the concrete areas that I used to play in are now bollarded up. There's the odd multi-use game thing, the basketball type courts.
Yep.
Any damp conditions, they're treacherous. You can't actually play football in them. They've put these things in good faith, but actually created a worse environment. I took a session on one last winter, and the kids, it was damp, it wasn't wet or icy. The kids were just sliding about the place. We couldn't get a footing. So we've lost all these facilities, but the other point, particularly in somewhere like East Ayrshire, where the population's quite dispersed, and again, I'm sort of fortunate, I'm in the south side of Glasgow where we've got a big catchment area. But one of the things Vibes and I suppose Forward Play as well is doing is we're trying to implement a small-sided format. So I let my girls play 3v3s, 4v4s, 2v2s, whatever the case may be. I've brought back two-a-side cuppy. I'm trying to stage a resurgence for the form of the game known as two-a-side cuppy, and give them that opportunity. And that means you can get away. I can run Vibes with 6 players. I can run it with 4 players. I can run it with 10 or 12, but I can scale it up. So somewhere where you've maybe got a bit more of a dispersed population, having futsal and having 4v4s, players included, and the more players, my fundamental view on Scottish football and how we improve it is the more at the bottom, the bigger the base of the pyramid is, the higher the peak. If we've got good players at the lower levels, at the grassroots levels, they'll be better opponents and better teammates for the next tier up, for the next tier up, the next tier up. And the wider you build the base, the higher you build the top. And my focus is on getting more girls into the game, getting more playing. Even it's difficult to start football now because of the amount of coaching going on at 11, 10, 12. You've probably missed some core physical and muscle memory development. But if we can get girls, we can get boys joining in with futsal, where they're learning the small technical sides of the game. The physical demands are different because it's no big long bursting runs. You can start to then build more teams out of these players, and that's my hope, is that Vibes acts as a pathway into Pollok, into the club team, so that girls come, join, learn the game, like it, and progress in and act as a feeder and just open up another channel. And things like futsal as well, for me, are great for that. You get people in who maybe enjoy certain aspects of the game. I mean, 11-a-side isn't for everybody. A lot of guys just end up playing 5, 7s, 9s socially. 11-a-side's a bit more of a commitment in most respects. So having the wee 4v4s and 5v5s where you can play for an hour, half an hour, get a bit of sweat on, get a wee touch of the ball is the way to go, and broadening participation. But I don't know how we can maybe bring back two-a-side cuppies, but I don't think we're going to bring back Red Ash.
It's one of the things that we discussed last week again was with it kind of harping back is like in the winter months is like, should we look at for the kids, maybe say up to 11-a-side football, you make a hard stop and say the 1st of December to the 1st of March, and it's exactly what you were explaining there, Dave, like the small-sided stuff. It doesn't need to be futsal, like a futsal league. I would love that, but it can just be a small-sided league. And now you then organise that with whatever teams are local to you. And if those teams don't want to get involved with that, then you can just do like the wee club I help coach with away for the futsal is we've got 20 kids, 20 boys in there. So like we could have like a wee mini league of 5 players. 4 teams of 5. But if you've not even got that space, you could utilise your community centre and do 2v2s, 3v3s. We do it. We just call it the Lightning League because it is literally first to 3 goals every pitch stops, and then you either move up or move down. And it's the Lightning League because it is fast, it's aggressive, it's pacey. There's a lot of goals. There's like you're using tight spaces, quick decision making, and it doesn't actually. I think that's part of the kind of frustrations. We're not saying to the council, give us £10 million per area. We're just saying, give us something. Just give us the most basic facility and we'll make good of it. But can we please have a toilet? Or could you have somewhere that we could hire out at a discounted rate in the winter months?
And being adaptive to the facilities or to your format lets you adapt to the facilities as well. So again, you mentioned the squad size there at 20, Darren. We are in the process of moving our teams up. The girls' age brackets work very differently, which is something we'll cover. And it leads to teams being formed and then have to be broken because boys will go up a year group at a time. Girls, it's a sort of 3-year age bracket. So some of my squad are going to trip over into 14s. Some have to stay at 12s. So what that means is you build the team and you have to break it, unless you're fortunate enough to have the numbers. But it's going to mean or it may mean in certain situations where you end up with a squad that's too big. And it'll happen in the boys' game as well, where you end up with a squad of 20 players is too big to run an 11-a-side team and give everybody game time. So you're going to have, on any given weekend, probably 4 or 5 boys or 4 or 5 girls sitting out. And again, one of these reasons I want the primary driver behind Vibes is to give them game time and give them a place to play when maybe they're not in the squad. And having small-sided lets you do that, because you do the Lightning League. If it came at, you could do it 4-a-side. You could maybe turn the pitch and make it 5. You can adapt and get everybody, get the ball moving and get everybody touches. That's my focus on it. And the smaller sided stuff. So one of the things I'm going to try and do is introduce next year a local small-sided girls league where we can play 5-a-side against other club teams. So Port could play Giffnock or play Park Villa or play somebody near us and say to the coach, look, can we just get a 5-a-side game on the go? We've got, again, I'm lucky at the facility we've got, where we've got 3 5s pitches, a full-size Astro and a 9s Astro. So we're very, very fortunate. But if girls aren't in the squad, then having that small-sided and being adaptable, and clubs being adaptable to going, right, we've got 6 boys from on the matchday squad. Let's get a 5-a-side on the go with 1 sub. Let's get a 4-a-side league on the go. And just, it's a time thing for coaches, it's a facilities thing, but the more, particularly for the girls' game, the more we keep them involved and keep them with that excitement, the better for me. And you know as well as I do, I'm sure, that training's great. I love training, but the big carrot is that Sunday or Saturday match where they get onto the pitch. And even if you create that type of, we're playing against another team excitement in a small-sided format, I think you can broaden the participation a wee bit as well.
100%. Dave, again, it's you've got the facilities there. Ronnie's team for last week, they've got 20 kids. Oh, there's my dog in the background. Sorry, they've got 20 kids and they got a third of a 7-a-side pitch. A half of a 7-a-side pitch for 20 kids. That's the pool, the size of the area they have, and that's we were quite aggressive with trying to get half an 11-a-side pitch for the 20 boys. And I'm saying to him, it's good because we can move from area to area and it just, the sessions flow. So how do you manage 20 girls? Ronnie said, like, sometimes it takes a wee bit longer for the girls to maybe develop, but they're actually, it's not that they're worse players, it's just that they're trying to do just as much as the boys, but you're getting a third of the space. And it's a challenge for them.
We've recently reshuffled and we've got a wee bit more space, but there's times we've been packed in and you've got them into a third. And then another thing that comes into it is you're moving up formats for 7s to 9s to 11s. You can't really train for 9s on a 37-a-side park. The passing distances have become too big in the pitch geography, to use a phrase that I don't particularly like, but the awareness of where they are on the pitch, you go from that tiny area to a suddenly much bigger area, it becomes disorienting. I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but the way we try and get around that is stations and just move them round and set up drills. One thing I always try and do with my drills is make sure they're constant. So I don't like standing about or waiting. This might be particularly true. I've never really coached boys to any significant extent, but if you leave girls at the back of the queue, the yapping starts and they start to get sort of distracted. I think one of the key differences, I suppose, is that with boys, the ball is the prize. The ball's moving. That's the focus. Like your Doug's the tennis ball, they're after it. My girls are there for a variety of reasons. Sport's one of them, but they're there for social aspects. They're there to interact. They're there for the community side of it. And I suppose where that sort of comes down to is the majority of my players don't watch as much football as their male peers. So they're not kind of projecting football culture. They're not going, right, there's the ball, we're here for that. They're here for a variety of things. And you have to my view is you need to take countenance of that and make sure that your drills are constant and stimulating. And there's I suppose boys would be the same. They don't mess about and start talking in memes and whatever, that 6-7 part that you get, but keeping them going, just keeping the drill constant, keeping the ball going, and keeping them actively engaged. One of the ways I do that is try and make it unpredictable. Just tonight, I'm just in for training, so that's why I'm alright. I'll get soaked tonight talking about outdoor facilities. I'm just literally drenched, quick dry and put the Vibes t-shirt on. But tonight, to keep the game moving, because it was bad conditions, I was imposing conditions on a small-sided game. It was 4-a-side. So ball goes out, next time it goes in, it's 2-touch. Ball goes out, next time it goes in, it's you've got to 5 passes is a goal. You're not allowed to shoot until you've had 5 passes. Next time it goes in, you've got to shout the name of a reindeer when you pass it. Next time it goes in, you've got to sing Jingle Bells if you've got the ball at your feet. There's an element of decision-making, learning to that. They're learning to kind of cope under pressure. But it keeps them moving. The game never gets dry. The game never gets boring. So they just keep moving and circulating. Doesn't help with the numbers if you end up with too many. But you just have to cope in these spaces as best you can.
See what you're saying there, though, like those wee things that do keep it engaging for the kids. And like I'm quite big in what my kind of coaching philosophy and how I see it is I like to get as much hidden learning in as I can. Now, you might be telling the kids that it's first to 10 passes and a wee rondo style thing, but you're tying in some hidden learning with it as well. So like one of the ones I do, some of the players we've got is quite good. So everybody does rondos at certain points, right? And I do appreciate that. But sometimes I think a rondo at the grassroots levels not the best use of time and space, because you've got maybe 2 or 3 people moving and everybody else standing in a circle. So one of the things I'll do is if I've got a rondo going just a wee quick 5 minutes, is when you make your pass, you also need to follow your pass. That then means you've got 2 people pressing, and I always have a bounce player in the middle as well. So with 2 people pressing, a bounce player, and somebody following your pass. But what that means is at any point, you're 10 boys, you've got 5 of them on the move, and it's chaotic, and it's designed to be chaotic, because that simple thing of follow your pass means that they're then having to scan where do they move, their touches, their touches, how do they see the game, how they receiving the ball, are they going to set it, are they going to bounce pass it, and it keeps it fresh. And that's just a wee example of the hidden learning. I think hidden learning is absolutely massive in the game, and it's something that's underutilised. 2 wee seconds, sorry. I'm going to ask you a question first, and I'm literally going to be there. So at the girls level then, what is the biggest challenges you face as a coach and staff?
The current big challenge we're grappling with is moving up age brackets, because the girls' age brackets are wider. So under 16, under 14s, under 12s, under 10s. So you've got 2-year bands. Really, 3 years can play within a band. The big challenge is trying to keep teams together and move them up and make sure that they're tiered correctly. The other thing is participation. So in a girls' team, it might be the same in some boys' teams, but my experience, certainly with teams in Glasgow, we've got a catchment, is you end up with quite a flat level. Boys can be tiered and you can have quite a flat level. The lower participation in girls' football means every team has a sort of spectrum of abilities in it, and catering to that and getting into a tier can be a challenge, and making sure that you might have a player who's an excellent player in a lower age bracket and play her up, or you then don't have the luxury of being able to move players down. So compiling teams is currently on my mind, because we're coming to the end of our season, which is now basically, and then going into the next year. In terms of facilities, we're very fortunate. We've got a 9-a-side Astro Park that is the correct dimensions for Astro. When we go at other grounds, you've got the parks lined out, and it can vary quite widely in terms of shape and size. That's no Indy's fault, and I certainly don't think any teams try to use that to their advantage or whatever, but it can break the game down a wee bit when you're playing on a square pitch or there's no lines. I think the financial element of building 9-a-side pitches is massive, but is it something that maybe should be done or should be looked at? Because we mandate 7 and 9 aside up until it changes too soon in my view. My daughter's 12 and is now going into under 14s. Theoretically, is going to be playing against on an 11 aside pitch, a full size pitch against players 2 years her senior.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably is in a nutshell the challenge there, where players go up that age bracket, they can no longer play at closer to their own age, and it's a false barrier because I've got a player who's at the upper end technically, but is right. She literally a day in to being under 14. So her birthday's just after Christmas, but she has to move up where she could maybe do another year at that level. And when you kind of compile that and the fact that going to 11 asides at 12, I think is madness. I think, just say that, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say the move up in format to 11 aside when at 12, when they're still physically developing, there's obviously developmental bits and pieces going on for girls at that age, and their bodies are developing at different sizes and different rates. Boys will be the exact same.
Yep.
Creates a kind of storm, a challenge, particularly at that moving from 12 to 14 level, with the physicality, the tiering of it, the age banding thing, the physical developments in 11 aside. And I think, and I will put a name to this and say it publicly, the SWF moving to 11 aside is just, it's far too soon, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would agree with that, even for the boys' side of it, because the wee team, my son's team, I'm a coach in there as well, and we get invited every now and then to play your kind of your elite teams, your kind of Kilmarnocks and your Motherwells and the likes of that. And we always, because we're not a kind of academy team like an affiliate to a Rangers, Celtic, Motherwell, Kilmarnock, Ayr United and the likes of that, you always play a year down. So the theory is that the elite players in at these clubs will play a year up and challenge themselves more. But we played a game on Friday night against one of these teams, and the boys scored 13 goals and then conceded 2, and then the second game we scored 8 and conceded 3, and we're not even a pro youth team. We're just a regional team, but we've got good players. But the difference from them that a year makes, I could not imagine our boys playing 2 years above, because it would just be such a big, the physicality, the speed of play, the aggression, the weight of a pass. They've got 2 years additional brain kind of like capacity for the game, understanding the game. It's just, I think that's got to be, that's surely got to be looked at. And is it, and did they ever come out with a reason why they made that decision? Was it just because we don't have enough players, or?
I think it's a participation thing. I've been on the receiving end, or sorry, my players rather been on the receiving end of that, where you never know when you turn up to a game what you're playing. One, at the early stages, the grading fixtures and so on. And there's times we've turned up to a game where we've been on the smaller side because of the way the age brackets have fell. And there's other times we've turned up and been on the bigger side, and you end up with the 13-2 doing, or you end up with the 10-0 win. And I don't take any satisfaction for the big wins, because it's a bit sharp practice for me. If you look for these games, we never have, but it occasionally happens where you arrange a friendly and you just get the wires crossed. I don't take any satisfaction for them, because the players are not really learning, and it creates a kind of false, oh, we're great. At the same time, it can be demoralising and dispiriting, but you don't take anything away from it where you're roundly beaten. The other sort of issue there, and again, girls football, we're very fortunate that the parents are great. I think one of the differences, you've talked to my friends who coach boys teams, there's a difference in expectation from parents, where most dads are happy their girls are playing football and happy they're participating in sport. Most mums are just happy they're doing sport. The feedback I get from my mates who coach boys teams is that there's a bit more pushing. It's not always, but there's a wee bit. But when you're watching a game and you're comparing your daughter, who's a 2015 born player, to somebody who's potentially a 2012 or 2013, and I've got them in my team.
Mm-hmm.
You can go, right, she's not really getting on very well, she's not really doing very well, and I can go, well, my daughter's a 2013 and there's some 2015s in her team, and it's easy to go because they don't know, the parents don't know the ages of the players, so go, she's a back marker, she's not doing too well, maybe move her, or maybe this and that. I say, well, you need to remember she's 2 years younger than my daughter, so in 2 years' time she'll be at this level. And just a wee bit of education point around that sometimes, that you can't expect to have, if you've got one of the younger ones, just by the virtue of the way the brackets work, they are just going to naturally be a wee bit behind more physically, most than anything else. But the other flip side of that, to go to the elite level, I suppose, is scouting. I've got a couple of great 2015s in that group, and by the same token, the parents look at that and go, she's maybe not doing too good, unless they've got a sign on their neck saying I was born in X year. The scout's not going to see it. They'll look at the older ones, and they'll stand out more, and they'll lead the team.
Yep.
And I've got, you could have, as I do, very, very technically gifted players, but they're just on the periphery of the game at 9-a-side, and that's only going to get worse. Going to 11-a-side where touches are fewer and the pitch is bigger. So if you're a scouting for women's games, you're going to naturally be predisposed, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out that it will be the women's game. I wouldn't be surprised to find out if there's more opportunities for players who are at the upper end of their age bracket, and that's I might get some pushback on that from when we made it. And I'm open to be educated. I've not been doing this that long, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was a wee bit of inherent bias just because of the structure, rather than anything doing.
There was a study, I'm sure it was Holland, age biased, and it was, I've not got the stats to my hand, but I'm positive it was upwards of 80% of the kids who were in at the Pro Youth setup were born from January to June.
Yep.
Then the boys July to obviously December, and it's just that age bias. And if countries like Holland can identify that there's a 6-month age bias, what chance do you stand if there's a 2-year difference? It's I mean, 2 years is massive. I had a wee Facebook memory of the award ceremony last year, and they look like babies. And
Muppet babies, isn't it? Aye. Muppet babies. I look at these photos and go, oh my God.
It was only a year ago. That's quite a challenge. So as to the art, that's what they said. It was like upwards of 80% of people born January to June, just because they're developing that wee bit quicker and that wee bit bigger. But I was looking at some of the stats. Like, and 2 years ago, there was upwards of 23,000 girls participating in kind of Scottish football, and you would like to think that as the game does get bigger and as the game does evolve, then they can start to restructure this. See me personally, I would push everything. I would push everything at least a year to the right. So you don't go to 9s until a year later. You don't go to 11s until a year later, because I'm finding it at the 7-a-side, and it's just in the boys' football that the reason I love the small-sided games, the 1v1s, the 2v2s, like one of my favourite draws is a 1v1 with two goals. So the defender can't just go and defend a goal. They've got 2 goals to go to. And I love that, because it gets the defenders defending well, it gets the attackers attacking well, there's decision making. But there's also no hiding place. So when you go to 5v5, right, okay, you can get carried, one player. When you go to 7v7, 2 boys can hide in that pitch, or 2 girls can hide in that pitch, and their only interaction with that ball is when it lands at their feet, and it's usually a big hoof up the park just to get it away. And I'm kind of seeing some of that at some of the boys I coach at night at 7-a-side, and I'm saying when we go to 9-a-side, this is going to get worse, and then when we go to 11-a-side, it's going to get worse again. And I want the players that I coach to be developed that it's not an arrogance thing, and it's more a confidence thing, and I'll take the ball, and I don't really care if I make a mistake, because I know by continually doing positive actions, my chances of success are going to increase than continually doing negative actions. Like, we're getting into the SPFL, but if you look at the way Rangers have been playing over the last kind of 4 weeks, it was going to come to fruition that you can't always just be negative and slip through a one. Eventually something's going to give, and it gave it the weekend. And that's just negative decision that eventually goes. Whereas if you're always positive and you're trying to do the right things, eventually it's got to kind of bear fruits, especially the grassroots game.
Yeah.
So that's my kind of opinion on that side.
It's interesting you bring up this the what do you call it? I would say switching off in games. Fun fours, everybody's chasing the ball. You've always got a chance of getting the ball. You've got the formats, and players zone out. Now I did a wee bit of personal training on the side as well, and used to do a lot of running. And there is a point where your blood glucose dips, and it impairs your decision making ability.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see that with players when you start to notice it, that it gets to 75% of the way through a game. They get to 45 minutes, and you can see there's nothing like we're the same. You go to work all day, you come home, you burst. I don't know if I want. Is it the North Pasta? I can't decide. Right? You've not got anything left to decide, and these are only young, small bodies. They run out of blood sugar quickly. They're maybe rattled a packet of Haribo in the car. They've maybe not had anything to eat. So again, no casting aspersions, but it's just a natural consequence of the sport. You see runners do it, professionals do it, it happens. But as you say, the scope for that increases massively. So tonight we put them into their first real attempt at 11-a-side. We kind of short notice decision, but we had 20 and 2 coaches. So we thought, right, we'll just go in and marshal, sit at the back and kind of just not really engage in the game, but you're just moving players into position. And there's a definite drift out of the game from certain players. You end up, the bigger the format, the fewer players are involved. It ends up 2 or 3 players are dictating the game on either side, and there's ones that are just, I'm a right back, I'm not getting the ball, nothing's come near me, so I'm not going to jog forward, I'm not going to jog back, I'm not going to mark the winger, I'm not going to tuck in. They don't know how, they're still learning that element of the game. But even at 9-a-side, one of my most kind of frequent exhortations to my players is to stay switched on, because you know yourself, you're coaching, you're scanning the full group and scanning again and seeing is everybody okay, they cry and end upset and blah blah blah. And you see somebody who is watching the birds a wee bit, right? Because the ball, you can see their defenders lining up a big diagonal into that spot, right? Come on. And it's just a natural consequence. And to me, the move up in formats and move up in brackets, the more time they spend on the park switched off and engaged, the less development there is, the less touches. And it should be the case that they've always got an active interest in the game going on in front of them, in my view. And I would move it 1 year, maybe 2, and say, right, 7-a-side up to 11, 12, 9-a-side thereafter. 11-a-side should come when you're 18. For a number of reasons. One, being competitive. 2, that you can make your own decisions. If you don't want to play, you can not turn up. And with things like, we're rolling subs, I'm very much equal game time and participation. But we introduce stuff like that too early as well. And you should always have an opportunity to participate in the game and play football. And I think really 11-a-side should be an adulthood thing. I don't really see what the game stands to lose by having players have more touches of the ball at a much younger age for much longer. The studies, I don't have the statistics to hand, but I think you get something like 40% fewer touches in an 11-a-side game versus a 9. The ball's out of play 30% longer. Things like that.
I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. No, I would. It's absolutely insane how people get disengaged. Like, again, we see it at the 7-a-side. So we've, like, one of my kind of golden rules is we play in 2/3 of the pitch. We always play in 2/3, and that's either defensive midfield or midfield and attacking. But we should never be defending and people in the attacking third, because then we're not moving as a team. And the reason I like the 2/3 thing is because I'm trying to develop them for the 11-a-side, where they can move up as a team and move back as a team. And it also encourages. I took the wee intermediate team that I coach. I took them on Saturday, helped coach with them, and we implemented the 2/3 and just re-emphasised that. And one of the centre halves went for usually standing kind of 10 yards inside his half to standing 10 yards outside the opposition box most of the time. And the proof was in the pudding, because we get 7 goals at the game and we conceded 1, and it was a big hoof right at the top when we get done for pace. But see, just something as simple as that, it keeps it. Well, for me, obviously with the boys' side, it keeps them engaged in the game for longer, because they know they need to squeeze up with the game, and now they're seeing that if we lose the ball in the final third, we can win that back because we're compact and we can win it back aggressively, and then we're going to create another goal scoring opportunity. And but the boys got a real buy-in for that, so they do, and it's like that. That's like one of the kind of key tips I do with people. But I'm already racking my brains with the boys stuff about how do you approach the 9-a-side game, formations and shapes, and then you've got, again, it might be a thing, I don't know how you get it with yourself, Dave, but we get some of the boys, I want to play as a striker, I want to play right mid, and you play them in these areas, and their natural ability and their natural instinct takes over. You're either an attacking player or a defensive-minded player, and it doesn't matter where you play in the pitch, you'll follow those actions. So I kind of say to the parents, we will play to their attributes and probably put them in positions which are attributes. So my son's he's very fast, and he loves being directed people, so he tends to play in the wing, and some of the other players they prefer to sit back and watch the game and defend. So they tend to play in defence. I don't know, do you get anything like that with the girls, or do you mix it up completely everywhere? Oh, I think Dave's dropped out there. What I'll do is I'll just quickly pause and I'll see if Dave's coming back in. Oh, there we go. Dave's dropped out of that. We were actually starting to get into a good conversation there about the girls' game. Comes Dave's just coming back in. I will add him back in. Hi, Dave. No, that's all right, mate. That's okay. So Liz, I don't know what the last thing you heard.
Formations at 9-a-side.
Aye, sorry, that's all I was saying. At formations at 9-a-side, and I just kind of went down the wee rabbit hole of what formation best suits the players, and do you pick players. So certainly, like myself, I'm a coach that will pick players into the positions which goes with the attributes they show. Some kids will come to me and say, I want to be a striker, I want to be a midfielder. You play them midfield and they sit defensively. You play them defensively and they bomb on. So I say to the parents, they'll tell us where they want to play, and we will play them in those areas at times to see how they are. But 9 times out of 10, their natural instinct will dictate where they play. I.e., if somebody's sitting back and they want to sit back and see the game and everything's in front of them, they're probably going to play a wee bit further back. My own son, he doesn't like centre mid because the 360, he likes straight line running, very pacey. Yep. He likes, give me a player and I'll get by him. So he plays left back, left wing, right wing. And it's just the attribute driven as opposed to where they think they want to play.
Absolutely, I'm the same. I had a player just asked to play up front. I says, right, okay, we'll try you up front. It's a defender, instinctively defensive, very loves the tackle, loves battle. So right, okay. So shouted her over. Says, right, go and play up front. She ran from me to there to me to up front, lasted 2 minutes, and then she ran back. She ran a big triangle. Decided it wasn't for her. So right, is that us done that? Okay, good. Right. So I'm a defender now, Dave. Right. I agree 100%. That's encapsulated in a nutshell. Probably as much as you can have a philosophy at grassroots level. I think if I was putting my daughter into a club and a coach said I've got a formation, I'd be like, right, you've not seen her, you don't know what she's got. So how you go put her into? Or we play this way or that way or this style? You can certainly have things like we pass and move and stuff like that. But I take the view that at grassroots level, I form the view that we're the bottom of the ladder, right? And what am I delivering? What's my job? The club are paying for these. The parents are paying the club for these girls to get a thing. That to me is fun, confidence, friendship, and participation in sport. That's where that monthly sub is going. We get them on the pitch. My view is that entitles them to a game at the weekend as well. They're subs, so you have to build a situation where as many are getting a game as possible. But I was thinking about this today. Actually, the way I set a team up or put a team out is to try and put them where their attributes suit, but also where they're going to shine and where they're going to do something that their parent or their grandparent or whoever's watching them is going to go, oh wow, I went to the game today and Holly did this, or Ellis did that, or Penelope did that. And they get, I try and create wee snapshots, though, so that Ellis will be defence and get to make a great tackle, Lola will make a great save and goals, Orla will step over, Penelope will get a shot away, and they get a wee moment.
Pause for 2 wee seconds, Dave. 2 wee seconds. Sorry, I just need to. This is unprofessional, but I just need. My battery was full, but it's been drained pretty quickly, so I just didn't want that to cut off there. Sorry, mate.
All the nonsense I talk, probably. I think you've got to see that bit as well as a grassroots coach. I think that what are you delivering to parents? We don't make any money, right? Yep. But well, vibes and foreplay maybe differently. But as a grassroots coach at Pollock, whatever, not getting paid, but the club's getting paid, and you're being facilitated to do a thing. So your role, to me, is to create core memories, to use the phrase for that film, Inside Out. And what I want for my players to come off the pitch and go, Dad, did you see that? Or Granddad, did you see that? And know that I've set out a team in a way that is going to let them all do a bit and participate. And on Sunday there, yesterday, was perfect. Everybody got equal game time. There was no wee injuries or knocks. Everybody get the 45 minutes. Everybody had a wee great moment in the game. And we won, but it's really beyond it all. But everybody went off the park and you can see them running and going, oh, did you see? I did this, I hit the bar, I had a tackle, I had done this. Ideal. And that to me is much more important than the girls like winning, so you kind of need to sort of move in that direction, if you like. But getting every one of them that wee moment that they remember and that wee boost of confidence to me is how I set up. And team setups are different week to week depending on attributes and who you've got. And it's a bit of a red flag for me if a coach says to me, oh, I've got a formation or I've got a way of playing. Well, you don't know week to week, day to day who you're going to get. You don't know where they're going to be at in terms of their attitude, for want of a better word, just how are they feeling because they're kids. Are they up for it? Are they not up for it? Are they ready? Did they sleep last night? Sleepovers are a perennial curse to me because maybe last night I stayed at the house. Didn't sleep. To do them all right. You're on the bench. Bits like that. But attribute driven and trying to create wee moments and wee core memories. It's not always possible. If you get it, it's the best thing coaching for me.
See when you're saying about that though, mate, like with the core memory stuff, because it's like a lot of the boys we work with, mate, their kind of core memories is like I think they're quite gallus, wee boys we've got, and I love it. Like they're trying bicycle kicks and that, and like maybe 1 in 40 will come off, but they're all laughing when they're trying it, and they're like again, we playing one of the pro youth teams the other week on Friday, and the boys are trying overhead kicks against them, and I was just like that. It just shows you they're playing with a bit of freedom, and like as that comes through like positive football, so it does. And like I think the young players, like the guys in the men's side of the game, the pathway into kind of the professional game it's a lot more structured, and it's there, and you'll create these core memories as you're going through there. Remember, we started here, you were into maybe an era, a Kilmarnock, and you could have like the fairy tale story, do you know what I mean? Like a John McGinn and the likes of that was deemed no good enough. And then they're absolutely flying. But just changing angle slightly, but kind of on the same theme. One of the things I wanted to just cover with you, Dave, for 10 minutes of your time, mate, right? And it's something I spoke to Ronnie about before. The professional game with women, how does that set up in terms of, is it financially viable to be a professional football player in Scotland as a women's game, or can we do more? Could we be doing more? Because again, I don't know anything about that side yet, and I'm completely green. And I apologise if it seems a bit kind of uneducated, but I was having a discussion with Ronnie again. Look, we're talking about his girls' team, and if they make it and they're deemed good enough, can they actually have a fulfilling career in football? In terms of, yes, they can train twice a week and play on a weekend. They might play in the Premiership, but is there opportunities being missed, such as if they're training 3 times a week, the other 2 days that they're not training, are they doing things like they getting involved in coaching, physio, analysis, player liaisons and coach development of the girls' game, the grassroots, and it's inspiring the girls of today to be the players of tomorrow by the people who are actively involved in the game at that level and saying, look, I was you 6 years ago, 8 years ago, I was you, and I'm now playing football at this level, but also I'm getting an education behind me so that when I retire at 35, I'm going to stay in the game, and I can then take 35 years worth of experience and put 35 years worth of education and retire at 70. But you've got an overall lifetime full of learning and coaching and developing the girls' game. Does that make sense, or is it just a?
No, that makes perfect sense, and I think it's going to take more than 10 minutes. That's something I think about a lot, and the honest answer, I suppose, is that I'm a bit uneducated as well. And as I said to you in the intro, I'm going to do my own podcast for Vibes FC, and I'm going to ask ex-professionals, female players who I've met and who I know, that to tell me, because I don't know what their pathway looked like. But the more I think about it, the thing with Vibes FC, what I want for that is for it to eventually be taken over by the players that are in it. My own daughter and her friends, I want them to become coaches, and if it can support them to get their badges, that's my ideal, and then I can hand it off to them, and it's their thing to run, because I am neither a woman nor a footballer, so I'm not really qualified to run a girls' academy. So get it to them, and I can step back, and that can be a bit of a legacy thing. But in terms of the forward progression, I think generally speaking, I think the future of women's football is probably going to be independent, in the sense that the majority of clubs are affiliated to men's clubs, obviously Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, Glasgow City being the notable exception in Scotland. And if you follow them on LinkedIn and look at what they're doing, they're proudly independent. And I think the needs of girls and female players and the fan culture around it is so different that it needs to be independent. You and I, you're in Ayrshire, I'm in Glasgow, football hotbeds, but it's very tribal. Kilmarnock and United, Rangers and Celtic, Hearts and Hibs, Ayrshire Juniors, Walsall, right? People who live literally 5 minutes apart have these real tribal rivalries and matches, and one valley to the next is warring with each other in junior football. The girls' game's different in the sense that it's a bit more about growth and personal development and collegiality, and the fan culture's different. And I think that's why you get the women's game gets a lot of heat. You get guys like Joey Barton running it down all the time, because they're trying to apply their, I'm a diehard whatever it is, Liverpool or Everton, and I'm a diehard Rangers fan, or I'm a diehard Celtic fan. You grow up in a culture where if you're a diehard Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs fan, you hate 4 or 5 other clubs just because of who they are. If you grow up in the Ayrshire Juniors, you hate certain clubs because of who they are. And the women's game's not like that. So I think independent clubs will start to spring up, maybe like Vibes. There's a number down south. And I hope that creates more opportunities, because if they're female-led, then there will be opportunities in coaching, analysis, the sports science stuff. I'm using the full football thing as a kind of inroad, but I want my daughter to be healthy in her later life. That's the number one priority. And I want her to maybe see the chance of becoming a professional slim, and the chances of becoming a professional who retires on, I don't know, Haaland money are zero pretty much at the moment. But if she can find a way into a sports science career, or physiotherapy, or coaching, or something else that's physical and fit, gets her outdoors, fit and healthy, and gives her a fulfilling, fun career, then that's the ideal for me. If she grows up to play football, brilliant. But looking at it realistically, something maybe like a scholarship abroad, or a career in physio, or a career in sports science, or something is more realistic. So I think the broadening participation and getting more girls involved and creating these opportunities is certainly something that I want to do, and pushing it in that direction, because I think culturally the chances of, you see some female physiotherapists, but women in boardrooms and at a senior level, or even in the staff of clubs, is still probably very, very limited in number, because of the culture that exists within men's football. And we're not going to change that. It's changing, but we're not going to change it. But I think broadening it out in the sense of having independent clubs gives women that opportunity and gives female players that opportunity again. Like yourself, I might be wrong, I might be batting up the wrong tree here, but it's my sense of where it's going, and I think you see the women's game's growing, and it's grown fast over the last 10 years. I think we are really at the ground floor in terms of the number of clubs that are going to spring up, the number of different ventures. The US is leading the way. There's loads of different things like vibes, like local leagues for women's walking football and all that. And I think we've not even started yet in the women's game, and there's a lot of growth. It's exciting times, certainly for me and having a daughter in it at this stage.
No, I was just going to say, no, I definitely agree with that, because as I say, Ronnie, who's obviously, he helps us with the pod, he has his daughters in the grassroots game, and he kind of started a couple of years ago, and he's now got 20 in his age group, but with the limited resources they have, the full pitch booking they've got for that hour is just full of kids, full of girls. So there's about 60, 70 girls every week there. We're not as caught up with down in Ayrshire, unfortunately. It's just a thing. My daughter tried it. She didn't really like it. She wanted to go to gymnastics, and now she's into kickboxing. That's her new thing. So she's still in sport, but she kind of didn't really like it. I said to Ronnie as well, it's like, I'm going to go and arrange a futsal session up for his girls, just to show them something different in the winter months. Like, we're happy to extend that out to yourselves as well, mate, and come up and get a couple of sessions up there, and just there is so much potential for growth up there with the girls' game, and I just sometimes think that it's no, people probably think I'm doommonger, but one of my concerns is, how do you grow a game when we've already got stretched resources and everybody wants growth, but we don't have the infrastructure to support that growth, and that it should be invest, and grow at the same time. And it might be the Ash Parks, it might be the futsal, it might be the small-sided games, it could be a whole host of things. But I just feel like the girls' football, just from my opinion, certainly down in Ayrshire, we're still light years behind everybody else and what they're doing, and it's taking away the resources, because you can have just as much joy. My wee niece, she plays with a girls' team, and she loves it. So and as you say, like, the parents, they're just as passionate about their children, boy or girl, playing a sport. I don't know anything about gymnastics, but my daughter loves gymnastics, so I take her every week. It's just what you do, and it's like, how do you make that fun for the girls going forward, but how do you also have like a lasting effect? That's the challenge for me, and that's what I want to use this podcast. And obviously, when you get Vibes FC podcast up and running, you'll probably be hopefully one of the leaders in Scotland to take that charge and challenge the change.
That's what it's all about. For me, the main driver's fun. I saw real growth, so I started taking my daughter's team as kind of head coach this year, and they were losing games they should have won, and they weren't producing what I seen in training. So I started to just introduce fun, and actually probably stripped out quite a bit of what you would call the quote unquote coaching kind of side, it, like the technical drills. I put them into a drill they knew how to work, that they enjoyed, made conditions and fun. So during the summer it was water guns and ice lollies. They just went like that. They just the ability skyrocketed, and it attracted players and attracts players to that group, and they want to be part of that. And I think for girls, certainly, obviously, if you look at participation, you look at what girls want for sport, if you look at studies and research, this isn't just, hopefully, my just uninformed male opinion. I'm very conscious that that's how it might come across, but there is a difference in having the fun as part of it. So, like, your daughter comes, maybe doesn't enjoy it. I would be looking at players like that and going, how do we get players like that to enjoy? What is it that they enjoy? How do we nut that out, get the core of that down, and attract more in and keep them there with the fun? Because again, as I said, majority of my players maybe don't watch football. I'd say out of if I've got a group of 20, I would say I've got 4 or 5. I've got 2 or 3 committed fans who are there every week. I've got 5 or so sort of floating fans, the rest wouldn't watch a game of football, wouldn't thank you for it.
Mm-hmm.
So they're no there because of the same reasons you and I went. They're no there to emulate Gaza or emulate Henrik Larsson or whatever. They're there to have fun with their pals. Mm-hmm. So having that for me is a big driver.
I think we'll just be bringing it to a close anyway, but I think that's the key thing then for any coaches who are involved in the girls' grassroots. The key kind of message is make it as fun as possible then, fun, engaging, and I suppose as well have some patience. And until the structure changes, just be mindful that some of these girls are playing 2-3 years above where their opposition. Again, with the boys, when we play a year below or a year above, it's a seismic change. So I can only take my hat off and commend you for being able to play 3 years up. We certainly wouldn't be happy doing it just because we know how quickly people develop over a year's piece. Dave, what we'll do, mate, is we'll just bring us to a close. I'll thank you once again for coming on, mate. Hopefully it's the first of many. We'll get one with Ronnie and Dave, and as soon as the Vibes FC podcast is up and running, we'll have that all over our social media as well, mate, and we'll support you on that journey as much as you can. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate, meeting you tonight and kind of discussing the girls' football. It's opened my eyes to a world that I didn't really know much about, to my kind of ignorance. So thank you, mate. Cheers,
mate. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope that was useful. Hope I don't get upbraided in the comments for anything I've said that's maybe out of turn. Like I say, I'm still learning the women's game and don't know what the future holds for us and what that looks like in 5 years' time, and it's going to change. So I'm on these things to learn and be connected as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. So we'll end it there. Episode 3 of Forward Play podcast, the girls' game. Thoroughly enjoyable podcast there. And if anybody's got any feedback or comments on or challenges that you face, then let us know in the comments. They'll go in the social media. And also, most importantly, what tips and tricks do you have to improve? What can we do as a cohort of coaches to improve and help the girls' game in Scotland? So from everyone at Forward Play Futsal and Vibes FC, thank you, and we'll end it there. Cheers.